Hello and welcome to another episode of the Brightsiding Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Bogdan, and today is such an exciting episode. I am so proud of this conversation, and I hope you enjoy it just as much as I did. I interviewed the incredible Lindsey Simcik, who is one half of the Almost 30 duo. Lindsey and Krista have been hosting this podcast since 2017, I believe, and they are such a North Star for me as creators, as leaders, as women existing in the world in a really authentic way. And they just came out with a book called Almost 30, and it's an incredible guide to surviving the last few years of your 20s and beyond. And I think that they really captured such an incredible niche as they were starting off this podcast, and it's been so incredible to watch it grow over the years. And I've just found so much comfort and wisdom from the content that they've put out, especially surrounding themes of spiritual searching and authenticity, which are both things I'm thinking about a lot and things that are very important to me. So when I saw that Lindsey was going to guest on 10 podcasts in support of her upcoming book launch, I threw my hat in the ring. I applied to be one of those 10 conversations. And when I tell you that I was like screaming when I got the email that she would be on the Brightsiding Podcast, I was screaming. I was so excited. And it was a huge milestone for me and just a huge gift to be able to talk to someone who I've had this like parasocial relationship with for so long and have really looked up to in my own journey. So it was such a fun conversation. We actually had some technical difficulties recording. This was most certainly the biggest interview I feel like I've landed on the podcast so far, and it was one that I was like quite stressed about and like really wanted to nail. And of course, when you're in that headspace, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. My podcasting platform wasn't working. We ended up having to record on her end, and I was really like worked up and nervous going into it, and then felt so self-conscious about how the conversation actually went. It was like, you know, when you have a big interview or kind of like a high pressure conversation, you leave just being like, was that even English? And it took me a while to finally sit down and re-listen to the recording. But when I did, I was blown away. Lindsey has so much wisdom to share. I'm honored that she graced the Brightsiding airwaves with it. And this was really a follow-up to a lot of the content I put out in May about love. And we ended up having a really gorgeous conversation around the timing of your life and surrender and learning how to be with yourself truly, and what that looked like for her, what that means. And yeah, it was a really, really inspiring conversation. I'm definitely someone who has a hard time releasing the grip on my expectations for the timing of my life and the timing of, you know, romantic love arriving and all of those things. So yeah, it was just really comforting to hear from someone who's been through it and has navigated really similar waters with a lot of grace, and yeah, just has like such a beautiful message to share. So I'm sure that if you are listening to this podcast, you are already a listener of Almost 30, but if not, order their book, listen to their podcast. Her and Krista are such incredible interviewers. They have over 700 episodes with just some of the most like beautiful and funny conversations that are on the internet right now, I think. I also don't listen to that many podcasts, so they definitely have been like the 2 or 3 that I've had in rotation the past few years. So consider that your endorsement for the Almost 30 podcast. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for keeping me going, for being patient. I feel very self-conscious sometimes of this whole project, to be honest, but especially like the cadence with which I put out content, the subject of my content. It's a very vulnerable thing, and there's a lot that I'm thinking about behind the scenes that doesn't really, get its own platform, and it doesn't need its own platform. But that's all to say, this is a project that is so dear to my heart, and it's shifting a lot in real time. But these sorts of conversations are like at the heart of what I've always dreamed this project could be. And yeah, to be able to do this and put this out is an honor. And to like learn how to edit video and audio, like I'm learning so much as I'm doing this, and learning a lot about even just how to actively listen and host beautiful conversations. That's really a skill that I'm proud to be working on, and I love working on. So I'm always open to feedback. I'm always open to suggestions, and I'm always down to have anyone on the podcast who wants to have a conversation around what it means to meet yourself where you are, in any context: love, career, friendships. I've seen a lot, I've navigated a lot myself, and yeah. So with that, thank you again for being here, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Lindsey Simcik.
Okay. Amazing. Lindsey,
Yay.
hello.
Hi, how are you? I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. It's truly such an honor to be chatting. And I feel like you and Krista have been in my ears through so many like important transitional moments. And when I saw that you would be guesting on some podcasts this month, I was so excited. And I want to start by asking you like how it feels to be on the other side and to be the guest of honor. I know you're no stranger to guesting, but this feels like such an important milestone moment where you're connecting with the community in a different way ahead of the book launch.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I first of all, I love connecting with you all, and there are so many just incredible podcasters, creators in our community. And I shared this before we hopped on, but I'll be honest, like these conversations with people who know us, have been on the journey with us, have been a lot more interesting and fun than some of the like more mainstream conversations that we've had. So I'm just really thankful. But I think just having, the book is coming out when we're recording this, it's coming out in about a week. And I told Krista yesterday, I was like, I'm fully surrendered and I am committing to having a blast. I'm so proud of this book. I am so proud of the work that we've done and the impact that we're about to make with this book. And I am just unsubscribing from the pressure and the pushing in a way that doesn't feel natural or like us. And I'm just like really, really committed to enjoying this milestone. So, yeah, check on me in a week, but that's kind of where I'm at today.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I feel like surrender is actually a huge theme that ties into the topic I'm so excited to get into today, which is love, which is the big theme that I've been engaging with on my platform.
Mhm.
And so much about love has been so difficult for me to engage with publicly and like speak about and like be more public with, because it's such a vulnerable topic. And I think there is so much surrender in that, and just surrender and putting out anything that's so connected to your heart and connected to your soul's purpose, I think. And I can imagine with the release of this book, as you and Krista are both just putting so much of yourselves into it. It has to be like putting your kid on the school bus, or like, sending this being off into the world where, you can only, all you can control is like the energy that you bring to that release, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. And I really like that analogy of putting your kid on a school bus, because I literally said this morning to a friend, I was like, I want to trust this book is going to have its own little journey out into the world, and that this book has an agenda, and this book has like its own type of, like a soul to it,
Yeah.
that um it will go places that we could have never imagined. And so, yeah, I'm excited to just see what she wants to do and how she wants to reach people. And but I think it's a very hard process to really let go and surrender, because I think everything and everyone is pushing us to try to control everything we can so that we get on a bestseller list and, we sell 1 million copies and all these things. It's like, we've done the work, the success has happened. We wrote a book. So I'm really interested in what happens when we sit back a little bit and just like bask in this incredible piece of work that we worked on for 2 whole years, So it'll be interesting. But I think anyone can relate to this feeling of like, I really want to control this. I really want to strategize and make sure I'm doing all the right things. But really, what we're being called to do is to let go.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing to do. I think the work in one way is actually a lot easier, especially as someone who is ambitious and like aware of how to kind of get to the end point of something. It's like you can pour yourself into it all day, and that feels so good and in your control. But when it comes time to like loosen the grip, that's something I struggle with a lot. But
Yeah.
one of my favorite like spiritual teachers, I guess, I don't even know if she would consider herself this. Do you know Tosha Silver?
I don't actually.
Oh, I am obsessed with her. She has a few great books, but one is called Outrageous Openness. And I don't know if this was in her book or just in one of her meditations, but she says an open palm receives more than a closed fist. And in moments where I find myself like grasping and white knuckling, that brings me I'm just like, okay, we just got to sit back and like,
Yes,
open the palms, allow some receiving in, and like invite in some more like magic and wonder.
definitely. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, Tosha Silver, I highly recommend
Tosha
any of
Silver.
her content. She's incredible. But I'm so excited to have you here to talk about love, because your solo episodes and all of the ways that you and Krista both engage with this topic have really informed like my relationship to love and my relationship to myself within this season of being single. I am, as of this weekend, just on the other side of my Saturn return, which is in, I know, like,
how do you feel?
I feel such an insane sense of relief that I was really hoping to feel, but I was like just so in the trenches of it the past few years that I was kind of like, maybe this is just how it's going to be for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Saturn transit shifted on Saturday, and I really did feel like okay, like just a pressure release and like a total shift. And it was happening for me in my 5th house of creativity and romance and all that. And yeah, in the past 3 years, I have quit my job to pursue Brightsiding, my creative project, full time. I have been on 1 million billion dates and like learned every sort of romantic lesson. I mean, you're never done learning your lessons, but like I've learned some lessons.
A lot.
Oh my God. And I feel like, especially in these past 2 to 3 months, like felt like Saturn was just like wringing me out for everything I had. And I'm sure you can understand that. What house was yours in?
In the second house. So it was hitting finances, relationships, home, like a sense of like security.
Mm.
Um, I'm pulling up my time passages app because I feel like this will always tell me what I need to know about my life. Um, let's see. Yeah, the second house. It's giving great loyalty, reliability, stamina, and persistence, and a deepening or concentration of the desire to possess both materially and with respect to loved ones. Yeah, there's also lessons around self-worth, or just like my security in the world. Um, yeah, which all came up. I struggled with my finances during this time. I just couldn't get it right. I could never hold on to money. And at the same time, I was like so desperately wanting to be in a deep, stable relationship in the wake of my breakup from my like college sweetheart. And so, like, everything that I had known just started to crumble and dissolve, and the plan for my life was becoming just kind of this like distant memory. And what was trying to come into focus was this new and more aligned vision for my life, but I was just so resistant. I was
Mhm.
trying to hold on so tightly to what I thought it would be, and I was just so sad and so disappointed and frustrated and critical of the fact that I wasn't where I wanted to be in my life. So um, yeah, like I was in a period of being single that really transformed my life once I allowed it to.
Yeah.
It was always wanting me to just lean in more, turn inward, and get to know myself without being in a relationship, so that when I did enter into relationship again, I would not self abandon for the sake of making the other person like me, or just for the sake of harmony in the relationship. So many, many lessons.
Yeah.
And interestingly, they pop up. They pop up throughout your life. That's kind of the interesting thing about Saturn. But I really think that, in your late 20s, early 30s, this is the period to set the tone with that relationship to change, so that when things come up again, and they will, um, you treat it more as like, okay, so I've been here. I've
Yeah.
definitely been here and navigated change. And it's kind of an adventure. Change wants to work on you for your greatest and highest good. So, what's here for me? Instead of like, why is this happening to me? It's what is here for me.
Yeah. I completely relate to that. And I think in these past few months of the true like final tests of Saturn or final learning experiences, I don't always love the use of the word tests, but there was the one thing that I noticed that was kind of like a silver lining was how differently I was showing up to those experiences compared
Mm,
to at the beginning of my Saturn return. Like, for example, ended I basically ended, I cut off all kind of like all of my toxic or like unavailable flings and
yep.
kind of like exciting, like cortisol inducing um romantic interests around like February, March, because I was like, okay, enough is enough. I was traveling for the first 3 months of the year in Southeast Asia, and two of my love interests from New York happened to be in Tokyo in the same week, which was
Weird.
crazy. So I saw both of them that week. And that, of course, led me to like sobbing on the Shinkansen on a train to Kyoto, like
Of
just in
course.
pieces, because
Mm,
a big theme of my like dating experiences over the past few years have been stories. Like I've always been the girl with the story, like the girl in the friend group with the drama, the crazy, like, you'll never believe what happened. You'll never believe who I saw in Tokyo. You'll never believe the two people that I saw in Tokyo,
yeah.
like I, a huge part of my identity, I realized was like really wrapped up in that sort of like attachment and that excitement. But
Mm-hmm.
after this like crazy like experience in Japan, I was like, okay, something has got to change here because like one, the stories are not enough. Like these are like candy, but it's not like nourishment, you know? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
very fun in the moment, but they're not like serving me. And a story in a group chat does not have like that is not
Yeah.
enough. And that's not what my identity is. Um, but also like I very much identify as a writer. So I think like experiencing these things also, I'm just like, what if this is the start of the greatest love story ever told? Like all of that.
Totally. Yeah,
Um,
we kind of believe I think it's easy to think of our life as a store as a movie and our life as like potential content to create around. Sometimes I think about that. I think Krista experiences that a lot, like with her experience dating right now. And I want to hear your question, but it just made me think about how I went from like dating around so much, chasing after the wrong people, having similar stories of just high, low, drama, whatever. And then when I met my person or reconnected with Sean, I was like, oh, this feels like peace. And it's not to say we're not going to have exciting times and challenging times and highs and lows, but overall, there is just a evenness and a security to our connection that is different from every other one that I've had. And sometimes the nervous system says this is boring, but it's actually like safe and nourishing. We just have to retrain our nervous system.
yeah. And I think that's something that there's not a ton of like value placed on that like experience of safety and peace always in our culture. And I think especially living in New York, like it's such a high intensity, like drama filled, like excitement sort of like
Yes.
the value is placed on those exciting moments, those exciting stories. And that becomes really normal in our body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the question I have for you on this topic is like I hit my breaking point in March. I was like, okay, something's got to give. I'm very introspective. I've read all the books. My best friend and I did Calling in the One last year. Like we've done it
Amazing.
all. Um, but I had to take a step back and just be like, okay, the stories are not enough. I got to take a step back here. I have to just be in solitude for right now and like surrender to that. But I'm curious for you, like, was there a breaking point in your dating experience where you also just had to be like, something has to change here? Or was it a more gradual like shift over the course of the years that you were single, where you kind of came into that
Y-
self-possession?
Yeah, it was a breaking point for sure. It was one Friday night. Um, I was just desperately hoping that one of the guys I was dating, hooking up with would text me and ask me to hang out, or if one of my friends would ask me to come out and hang, and then I would eventually meet up with one of those guys. And I never got a text. And, I'd started the night by making myself dinner and just like kind of slowly getting ready in anticipation for someone asking me to go out. But at one point I just realized it wasn't happening. And I was like on my apartment floor in my living room and I just like broke down crying. I was so confused as to how I got here. I was so disappointed in how I was just waiting around for someone to pick me, choose me, call me, text me, invite me. And I wasn't truly participating in my life in a way that I knew that I deserved and I knew I could, and actually making things happen and actually creating joy for myself and not waiting for someone to create that for me. And after just like a very dramatic, cry on the floor that felt so amazing, actually, I kind of came out of it and there was just kind of a levity and a lightness to my body and just how I was feeling. And almost this like just hug, not to sound corny, but like a hug from my soul that was like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. we are not doing this anymore. And we're going to do this together. Whatever it is that we're going to do next, we're going to do this together. And that was the moment that I committed to dating myself instead of trying to date, the city of Los Angeles. And that this practice changed my life to be able to spend time with myself, enjoy it, be in my own energy, not numb out on my phone or distract myself in any way or numb out with alcohol or what have you. I really started to enjoy my own company. And I started to remember why I was amazing. I think when you're dating, it is very easy to lose sight of why you're an incredible person, why your heart is just amazing and sweet and loving and thoughtful and just all the good things about you because you're like, wait, but no one's picking me. So there must be something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
So this practice of dating myself looked like taking myself out to dinner, sitting at the bar, ordering myself an amazing meal, not being on my phone, just kind of taking in the surroundings. Maybe I befriended the bartender and just kind of was in conversation there. Maybe I brought a book. I would take myself on farmers market dates. I would go on solo trips where I would just go away for the weekend by myself. And, this is a practice that I continued into when I was in relationship because I think it's so important. Your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship that you have. So, I am deeply committed to tending to that always. But yeah, it was a breaking point. I just got so sick. I got so sick and tired of waiting for someone to choose me, and so I decided to choose myself.
Yeah. And I think that's a really universal experience, that like breaking point, that crying on the floor or crying on the train or whatever.
Yes.
And it's like affirming to know that we've all been there. And I think surrendering to that and allowing that in and even inviting it in is actually
Mm,
where like so much beauty can happen. And yeah, the catharsis of that very specific cry is so real. It's so real. And
yes.
I think that is where just like, yeah, again, so much magic opens up. But that experience of like, of being in the dating scene and like feeling like you're selling yourself is so excruciating too. And I feel like it can be really hard to like take a step out of that before you hit
Hmm.
that breaking point, or like knowing that that breaking point is coming. Sometimes I think we all just kind of have to like hit that wall and be like, okay, like let's cry it out, let's feel it,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
um but I think there's also this kind of other end of the spectrum where it's just like, well, I have to keep dating, I have to keep pushing, like I have to keep showing the universe that I'm trying, or keeping my light on, or whatever metaphor you want to use.
Mhm.
And I think being able to redirect that energy into yourself is so important. And it's also like, that's a really difficult shift. And I'm curious, like, as you were starting out on that journey, like, what kind of growth edges did that bring up for you? Was it hard for you to find like joy and solitude at the beginning of that? Or was it something that you found came really naturally?
Yeah, it was definitely hard. It had been a really long time since I like was actually with myself and in my own energy. And what came up was, glaringly the ways in which I had abandoned myself. And what started to come up were the desires that I had repressed in relationship. And I think it's just hard to know that you did that for so long. It's very confronting, and it feels like, how can I ever come back from that and do it a different way? But it was just like a day by day process. During that time, I started therapy, and I've gone to therapy every other week since then for about 7 years. And it's been the best investment I've ever made in myself and will ever make, I think, moving forward. I was able to, really uncover why I was showing up to relationships in the way that I was, what was the root of that, and to bring a lot of compassion into the processing of that. And it wasn't easy, it was like sometimes excruciating work, but I'm so thankful that I was like brave enough to do it, because I think going to therapy is brave. Once you're in it, you realize just how life-giving it is and how incredible it is. But, it is brave to take that step, because you're going to open up that, can of worms, if you will. And it's like when you see something or realize something, you can't really unsee or unrealize it. And your soul kind of pushes you to make a change. Now that you have to do better. So I think that was difficult. But it becomes your new normal, and I think we as humans are very resilient, and actually we are primed for change. Our brains and bodies and souls are obsessed with change and love change and are primed for it. So our mind, not so much. Our mind says, I want to keep doing what I've always done. This is safe. This is what I know. But the other parts of us are just so down for it and so excited for change and actually thrive in change. So I kind of leaned into those parts. I really began to understand how my mind works, how powerful it is, and how I can like rein it in moments where it's actually not serving me the best to lead with my mind.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. And I think when you're doing this sort of work, for me, at least in my experience, it's kind of like swinging from one end of the pendulum to the other. And I'm very much in the process of like finding middle ground.
Yeah.
But as I've been really taking a step back and yeah, like kind of drawing a line in the sand and being like, this is what I'm going to accept in my dating life, and this is what I'm not going to accept. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the reward for that sort of work can be like boredom. And that's when the mind comes in and is like, well, wouldn't it be fun and normal for us just to like go text that old fling or just go text that ex or like
Yeah.
get back on the apps just to like see what's going on. And I'm like, I think app dating can be wonderful and very fun. For me right now, not the case.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's so important to like recognize as you're doing this work, like what your that relationship to change is, and remember that like, oh, this is like kind of a chemical process that's happening inside of me. And this isn't supposed to be like easy. It's not as easy as getting off the floor one Friday night and being like, and now we're good. And now we're better. And now we're
Yes.
like never going to think about those boys again, never going to think about like texting
Mm-hmm.
an ex. Like, I'm curious in those, were there any moments of like temptation for you to engage in old behavior as you were in that process of shifting? And if so, like, how did you meet yourself there?
Oh yeah, lots of temptation. I think that's what happens actually. And you kind of hinted to it earlier, the tests. And I agree with you. Sometimes the word test is a little like, but I think they were. Like
Mm-hmm.
after I would just, for example, if I would declare like I'm dating myself, no more. I am going to choose myself before I choose anyone else and see how that feels different. And what do you know? The next few days I would have guys texting me like, "Hey, you want to hang out tomorrow?" or "Hey, it's 10 p.m. Can you come over, etc." And in the past, I would have certainly been like, "Yeah, give me 10.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. I would love some attention." So it actually took, you know, just a mindfulness. It took an intention that I set to just fortify kind of this barrier of sorts around me, where I'm like, yeah, no, I'm actually not going to
Mm-hmm.
succumb to the old patterns. I deserve better than that. And I am on a new path now. Um, and a more conscious part of my path where going backwards or going back to that old pattern would not be serving my greatest and highest good. So it was just a constant reminder. It was a noticing of how those things would come up, and also just like a pride in how I would now treat it differently or do it, make a different decision when those tests would come up. And you just kind of build this confidence where you're like, ah, yeah, okay, like I passed that test. Like,
Yeah.
I am not going to do what I've always done. And how does that feel? That feels liberating. That feels, ooh, I feel really confident. I feel, in the moment saying no felt but the next day I woke up and felt like $1,000,000, because I know I chose myself and I'm not doing the walk of shame. Which, I enjoy a walk of shame. I did enjoy a walk of shame every once in a while, but it's just, it's different. You're growing. And so like being in recognition and the honoring of that, I think is like a new experience, or was a new experience for me, rather than just being on autopilot in my life.
Yeah, totally. This past weekend or 2 weekends ago, I had a major test. One of the boys from Tokyo, he actually
Mhm.
doesn't live in New York, but he was back in New York after I had like in March been like kisses, but I can't really move forward here. Like he was
Yeah.
very clear about not wanting something long term. I take that at face value, and I was like, this has been so fun, but like I just gotta step away.
Blessings. Yeah.
And there wasn't much of a like response or engagement from him, which was fine. And then he like basically you upped me when he was in New York a few weekends ago. And luckily I was not in the city. So I was like, I cannot engage with this. But I
Mm-hmm.
was like, even if I was in the city, like there's absolutely no way I could engage with this. But that first opportunity to like really make a different choice after you've drawn the line in the sand, it's such a like milestone moment, such like a canon
Huge.
event, because it is like having like a drug placed in front of you and you having to like really want like sit with the experience of like wanting to engage with that drug but
Mm-hmm.
not.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that next day, by the time I was safely back in New York and he was safely not in the city anymore, I was like, oh my God, that's the new drug. Like that's the new
Yes,
like
that's the new
high.
drug. Oh my God, it's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah. And the experience, like texting that in the group chat, being like, guys, guess what
Mm.
I didn't do? Like, that's the new like story, actually. And that's the
Yeah.
new thing to celebrate. And it's so
I'm obsessed
funny.
with that. That's exactly it. That is the
Yeah.
new drug. That is, yeah, you as you become more conscious and you begin to choose yourself, yeah, it becomes a high. It becomes that new hit to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to do me. And it might, rock the boat. It might disappoint some people, but it hits so differently. It's the best.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. And I also think that's where a lot of like magic and wonder starts to come online because you're like,
Hmm.
whoa, if I can do that, like, what else can I do? And we're obviously talking
Yes.
about this in a dating context, but I think this applies to like all arenas when you like decide to make a change in your career
Absolutely.
or in your health and fitness realm. Like
Mhm.
that first time you get to the gym, it's like the last thing you want to do, but it's like, oh my God, I did that. Like, what else could I
Yes.
do? And I think a big part of my experience in being single right now is, yes, centering on like the time I get to spend with myself. I spend a lot of time alone and I really cherish that. And I love that me time. But I think the thing that's like really anchoring me right now is the like, what could happen next? Or like, as I'm showing up to myself in this new way, like I'm opening up so much space for things that I like can't even predict. And it's not about like going out into the world with this like expectation of like, oh my God, like who am I going to meet right now? Although I
Mm-hmm.
have spent a great deal of like my past few years being like looking over my shoulder, being like,
Where are they?
is he at the bar? Like, is he in the laundry room? Like, where is he? But I think, like, in a deeper way right now, I'm experiencing this like a huge reward, I guess, of choosing myself and choosing to not engage with dating in the way that I have in the past. Is this
Yes.
like really incredible sense of like wonder and faith and just like imagination. And I think that is
Mm-hmm.
like so directly tied to like the confidence that's built when you're making that change. And
Yeah,
I just think that's like that's a cool thing to be experiencing right now.
absolutely. And when you trust the timing of your life, it just becomes so much more fun. I think we spend an incredible amount of time trying to control the timing of our lives, trying to do the right things at the right time to get the thing that we think we want or that everybody else has, or what we think, where we think we should be, who we should be with at a certain time. And I often wonder, like, all of that energy spent doing that, what if that energy was redirected elsewhere, to ourselves, to presence, injected into like just mini moments in our lives? Like, how much more fulfilled and happy would we be? I wonder, So, yeah, it is a really, really special time that you're in. And, you know, I it's just cool to look back on my life where I had that 7-year period of being single. I feel like 3 years of that were really spent mindfully in that period and thoughtfully and just being with myself and loving myself more deeply. And in the best way and in, a reflective way, I'm just like, wow, I'll never get that again. I'll never have that period where it's just me. And I'm thankful, right? I wouldn't trade it for the world where I am now, but it's just a reminder for you all who are in that period where you're like, where's my person? Like I'm done. Like come on. It's
Mm-hmm.
like hopefully, you will meet your person and you will then be together for a really long time if that's like your desire. And so to actually be with yourself and just yourself for a period of time is such a gift and is such an opportunity to transform for the better so that your relationships moving forward are as healthy as possible. So yeah, I just think about that where I'm like, I haven't had a solo me date or solo trip in a really long time. I don't desire it in this moment. I'm very much in just the realm of like being with my family, and that's like where I'm the most happy. But I know that I will soon meet a time where like that is something I really desire, and I'll know how to do that because I've done that and lived that. So I'll always refer back to that time. It's a very valuable uh, gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Sometimes in my like more difficult moments in this season, I play like a time travel game with myself where I'm like, I I know and I really believe that like these this partnership, these things, these goals I have in my life, like they will be fulfilled and it's going to be so joyful and it's going to be so connected and right and surprising and all of the things. So when I'm in these like darker moments where I'm just like, oh my God, like I can't
Yeah.
call my mom crying one more time. I can't like I just can't do this anymore. This is so hard. I try to pretend like I'm time traveling back to this moment in and just like sink into it from a different perspective of having like
Yeah.
gotten all the things and like being in such a different stage of life, which I know I will be at some point,
Hmm.
and just trying to like meet myself in these moments with a little bit more like, yeah, just like wonder and like, wow, like actually this is crazy. Like, I don't, it's not
Crazy.
about like forcing yourself to enjoy moments that you just need to kind of feel through and be sad in. Like, I don't believe like happiness all the time is the goal at all.
Right.
But I think like in this moment, just inviting in a different perspective and yeah, like playing that kind of game with yourself. The mental gymnastics you have to play as a single person, I think is really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the things that I think helps me sometimes from just like, I look around in my like girl apartment and I'm just like living my life and I can have my friend down the street come over with a bottle of wine. I'm like, actually, this is like really sweet and cute.
So
And
sweet. It's the
yeah, those
best.
moments are, you know, those moments can be so fun and so
Mhm.
like special in their own right too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, I'm excited for you. It's a potent time. It's a really, really potent time. And I think the more that we can lean into the unknown in our lives, the better we'll be, because I think we become so afraid and averse to the unknown because we need to know. We need to know in order to be okay. And that's just not true. That's a lie that we've been made to believe. And this period for me was that it was just wholeheartedly trusting in what I didn't know and
Yeah.
wholeheartedly trusting in my life and its very unique unfolding and wholeheartedly trusting in myself and my soul to be as present as possible for what's in front of me rather than just so focused on what I don't have.
Yeah. And we're told that we should know it's like that's the norm in our
Mhm.
careers, in our like social lives, even there's so much pressure and like expectation that we do know so much.
Yeah.
And I think when we identify an area of our lives where it's like, actually, I don't need to know. I don't like, I got to know a lot of other stuff. And like,
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot else that like needs my attention and like where I can like redirect this energy. And when you realize
100%.
there's like an area where you can actually kind of take a step back, that is so freeing and so like it's like such a like you laugh and you just like take a deep breath and you're like, oh my God, great, great. I
Totally.
can just like take a chill pill for a second and yeah, again, like invite in that wonder. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's something that can be hard within that space, and this is maybe like a good kind of like topic to wrap up on, is navigating that with law of attraction. Like I'm someone who is very like engaged in a lot of like spiritual teachings and readings and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. And I feel like law of attraction is something I've been struggling with lately because in my little lizard brain receives this information as like, okay, you operate at the frequency, you are in gratitude, you are like, exhibiting all of the traits that you want to attract. Like that means you walk out the door and like everything's going to fall into place. And
Mm.
when that doesn't happen, there can be such a like cognitive dissonance moment where you're like, wait, but like I'm doing all the things and like, why isn't this happening? I think there's like a layer of that in those
Yeah.
moments of either boredom or, like laying on the couch frustrated when you're like not engaging with any of the things. And I'm curious, like, if you had any similar, like, kind of like having to wrap your head around or even like dismiss law of attraction in like that, like, there's like a spiritual
Yeah.
perfectionist kind of thing that goes on when you are like really engaging with that sort of content. And I've really had to like step away from it. But I'm curious, like, what your relationship to law of attraction was when you were like in the throes of being single and if you had a similar like reckoning.
Yeah, I think, there was a part of me that felt like if I felt it all, if I acknowledged all parts of me, like even the ugly parts that I didn't like, that I would not be a magnet for what I really, really wanted. And that was not true. What I discovered was that the more I allowed myself to acknowledge and be with and express the parts of me that felt underexpressed, that felt a little not so presentable to the world, was actually when I began to attract relationships that reflected back to me the type of unconditional love that I truly desired. You know, my husband, when I first met him, like he wasn't looking for anything in me that he could critique. You know, he was taking in all of me and loved what he felt and saw and experienced. And I was like, well, what do you mean? How? Like that part of me? Ugh, like, what do you mean you like that part of me? And really, what he was teaching me was just this true sense of unconditional love. And I had placed so many conditions, both on myself and on other people around love, that like his approach was confusing to me and honestly unattractive to me. Um, but when I started to embrace those aspects of myself and let myself be messy and unprocessed in and be witnessed and held by another person in those moments, that's when I really started to become a magnet, because I was no longer suppressing the parts of me that really needed some tending. Um, and what tends to happen is that, you know, I did become more of a positive, quote, high vibe person when I allowed myself to feel all the feelings, to be messy, you know, unprocessed. And um, it was kind of like this miracle where I'm like, oh, I didn't need to just feign perfection in order to attract the person that I want. The person that I really desire is going to love and accept all parts of me. And I intend to do the same. Um, so yeah, my relationship with law of attraction is like I believe in it, and I think we just spiritually bypass it sometimes where we're like, okay, let me just get into a positive state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Great. I'm here. Where is everything? And we kind of bypass, you know, what it means to truly live in a state of surrender and gratitude. And, you know, gratitude, part of gratitude is being in acceptance of what is, you know, is being grateful for what is. So, yeah, I had to get into the nuance of all of that. And I listened to a lot of like Abraham Hicks and um, really like resonated so deeply with so many of their messages, and have applied it to my life. But I just had to put down this idea of perfectionism and how that related to attracting what I wanted in my life.
Yeah, it reminds me of that like description you had of getting up off of the floor after that like breakdown and that cry and like feeling like you're getting that hug from your soul.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that is the feeling. And you don't always
Yes.
need a breakdown or like a cry or catharsis to get there.
Hmm.
But when you realize that actually like that's where the like living really happens and that's where like the actual magnetism really like radiates from, it's
Hmm.
that place of like fullness and accepting of the parts of you that are like so hard to look at. I have so many parts that I'm just like, oh God, it's just so hard
Yeah.
to like look at that in the mirror. But I think there's so much wisdom there and just so much like it's a good reminder for me that like it's safe to engage with these things. And
Yeah.
I think that's a part of the kind of like law of attraction detox that is so necessary for me. It's like finding safety in those places. And
Hmm.
to your point, like remembering that there's so many people out there. So, and I experience this in my friendships for sure, but like so many
Yes.
people that I haven't even met yet that will be so excited to like engage with all of those parts of me too. So,
Because, I think we forget that we would do that with someone that we love. You
yeah.
know, we would love all parts of them and hold space for the processing of, the parts of them that they felt were a little messy or whatever and imperfect. We would do that. We would do that for someone that we love. And so we must actually do that for ourselves first, um, in order to get in right relationship with that. I remember being so critical. I knew that like I kind of had a distorted view on this because when I first started dating or when I first met my now husband, I just had a list of like what was wrong with him. And I realized that it was a direct reflection of just how critical I was of myself and how unaccepting I was of aspects of myself that I felt weren't acceptable or perfect. And so when I worked on that over the years, when we reconnected eventually, the parts of him that I deemed unacceptable or like not what I liked are actually some of my most favorite parts of him now, which is so interesting. So it showed me that I I really stood I just had a lot of room to increase the compassion and love I had for myself and all of my parts because it directly related to how I viewed people around me.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And what a beautiful mirror and like such a cool experience to have that kind of benchmark with your husband where you were like, oh, we met at like this very specific time. And just
Mm-hmm.
to measure that growth within yourself
Big
is
time.
such a rare opportunity and something that is like so interesting on so many levels.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a gift. Now we know we can grow so much, so we like hold each other to a high standard. We're like, we've done this before. Let's keep it going.
That's amazing though. And something that is so like beautiful and
Mm,
aspirational. So
yeah.
I I see you and I take so much strength and wisdom from like following along on your journey. And
Yeah.
having had you in my ears for so long, like I've always had a perception of you as being like so grounded and down to earth and truthful. And it's so amazing to meet you and like to realize that is so real and authentic. And there's such a warmth to you. And it's been such a gift and a joy to have this conversation, Lindsey. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to read the book when it arrives next week. It's
Yay.
pre-ordered
Aw.
and can't wait to see the life that it takes on, which I'm sure is going to be so sparkly and phenomenal and cool.
Oh, thank you, Erica. This has been a pleasure. You're just so thoughtful and deep and yeah, I feel like I haven't had a conversation like this, which is always nice. I love to just talk about things that like I haven't really dug into. So thank you because it's that's not easy to do and thank you for like your support over the years and just being with us on this journey and um yeah, I'm excited to see where you go and I would love to keep in touch so we can just stay up to date on this beautiful journey you're on because I know I know it has its moments, but you're just in such a beautiful, beautiful season of your life. And I know it will yeah, it will bring you to the next beautiful season of your life, in partnership. And that's coming really soon. But you're doing a great job of just being really present to what's right now.
Thank you. That means a lot. And
Mhm.
yeah, excited to see our paths cross again soon.
Yay.
Enjoy hopefully what turns into a beautiful day in Brooklyn
Thank
slash
you,
New York.
honey. Thank
And
you.
we'll be in touch.